Hi and welcome to the channel. Let's be honest, a lot of these car history searches I do are down to you guys out there and the comments you put in below. And one I've been fending off for a while is the big one in some ways. It's the Trotter's van, and it was the dead stig that set me thinking about it, and I went, no, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to do it. And yeah, as usual, I fell down the rabbit hole. So strap in, this is going to be a bit of a ride. For those not aware, Only Fools and Horses was a popular British TV sitcom that ran between 1981 and 1991 as a series. It had 54 episodes over 7 series. There was then subsequently 10 Christmas specials which eventually finished in 2003. It followed the antics of the Trotter brothers and their various get-rich-quick schemes which never seemed to quite come off. And their transport of choice was a little yellow 3-wheel van. I want to clarify a few things, a bit of housekeeping really, before we go on. Firstly, it's not a Robin Reliant van, it's not a Reliant Robin van, it's a Reliant Supervan 3, and they were produced between 1968 and 1973. And the other thing I want to tidy up is the fact that in the program you'll see a registration number DHV938D, and this is a fake plate. It doesn't appear on DVLA, and also this plate would have been issued sometime during 1966, which is 2 years before this van would have been put on the road. So that was one used for TV for continuity once they got past the first couple of series, which I'll explain in a minute. So strap yourself in and let's go for a ride. I'm going to go through these in the order I think they have credibility, and you tell me what you think in the comments. So our first contender is APL 911H, and I'm certain this vehicle was in the program, and the reason I'm certain of that is because we can see a picture of it. Now, this one was featured in the first 2 series, and most memorably in the episode where the Trotter family attempted to clean some chandeliers with disastrous results. A DVLA check on this one, it doesn't give us much hope initially, is that the last tax expired in 1983. However, an MOT check shows actually this van was MOT between 06 and 13. So there is some activity, and also it had a change of ownership back in 2007. I think this is significant, and I'll explain to you why. I'm going to have a little bit of leap of faith, so just bear with me. There's a chap called Peter Nelson who ran a museum called Cars of the Stars, and he sold out his collection in 2011, except for allegedly the Trotter van, and we'll see in a moment he actually sold a previous Trotter van in 2007. I think, and I am on a little faith here, that he owns APL 911H because the change of ownership ties in with when he sold the other one shortly afterwards, so why would you need more than one Trotter van? And it would be what you could class as, I would argue, the most authentic van because it was seen on the programme. Who knows? But that's our first contender. So our second van is WTF 946L. Sorry, I am going to have to work from notes because there's so much on this one, on all these vans. And this van first comes to prominence back in 2007. So that fits my previous thoughts of it being sold by Peter Nelson, which is what it says in this BBC article, and replaced by the original van. Now, Peter acquired this van in 1989, and he then sold it in 2007, and he sold it through Kaiser Kensington, and it actually went for £44,000, which is quite eye-watering for a Reliant Supervan, but obviously it comes with quite a lot of provenance. It was sold to a chap called Philip Walker, who was a car collector, had apparently around about 25 cars, and his intention was, according to this article in the British Comedy Guide, that he was going to embarrass the kids by picking them up from school in it. Well, I'm not sure that went too far because it's never appeared on the MOT register and would have been due up until 2018, so maybe he didn't actually do that. And then there's a subsequent change of ownership in July 2019, so it does appear that he had subsequently sold it on, but I can't find any record of that sale. And so it's out there somewhere, I'd imagine, because someone would have paid good money for it, but it's off the radar at the moment. An interesting story, which I believe relates to this one, told by Peter Nelson through this article in the Telegraph back in 2011, is that this original van, he purchased it at the end of the show, which I guess back was in 1989, for just £950. The BBC then decided they wanted to film some more Only Fools, so wanted it back. And he said, okay, I'll hire it to you for £950. So effectively, he got the van for free. That's a real bit of wheeler dealing that the Trotters would have been impressed with, isn't it? So at 3, we have BWC 94F. And this is interesting because this is actually a little bit early for the actual Supervan 3. This is actually a 600cc engine version. The rest was 700. And so this would make this theoretically a Supervan 2. This first came to my attention in November 2008 when it was at the Bonhams auction. It was guided at between 20 and 30,000, but unfortunately they don't actually give a sale price. And according to the information around it, this was the vehicle used in the 2002 Christmas special, If They Could See Us Now, which is obviously when, you know, they'd made all their money. And then it reappears in November 2017, and it was sold by Silverstone Auctions then, and that went for 41,000. So I assume the previous one had gone for the guide. Someone had done okay on that one. Allegedly it had some work, it had a recon engine, it now had a remote start facility and a smoke facility for out of the exhaust. Had this, you know, the same provenance that the previous one sale had given it, which was it was going to be used in the Christmas special. It also had letters from the BBC to confirm its authenticity. And I've done some more digging on that, and there's a chap called John Mansfield that comes to light, who previously owned this car, and he was a former BBC employee, and he will, you know, come up again a little bit later in the story. And there were letters from him also in the history file. Now it has had a new keeper in 2020, so it has had some form of change of ownership, but there's no record of, you know, an auction sale or anything like that, so perhaps it was a private sale. MOT and activity wise, it had MOT between 2008 and 2017, so it's definitely on the road, but it only done 250 miles over all those years, so really hadn't done a lot of work. And that's about it I've got on that one. So on to the next. So our fourth contender is JPL 725K. This car was also owned by John Mansfield, the BBC guy mentioned with the previous car, and I believe he'd owned it for 6 years. The provenance it came with was, according to the auction by Silverstone back in 2021, was some headed paper and a BBC keyring suggesting it was used in the programme, and they said there was no reason to disbelieve the account given by John. I'm sure that's fine. Personally, I would look for something a bit more affirmative, but hey, it went to auction and they sold it for £36,000. Fair few quid for a little fiberglass van. They said it had been recently recommissioned, so it was up and running, and the buyer was a chap called Dale Biddle, and he was a gold trader, and he purchased it partly, he said, to do some sort of charity work with it, but also as a bit of a promo tool for his trading business. And as we can see by the pictures here and a bit of video of him running around in it, he's obviously very happy with his purchase. It then reappeared 2 years later in June 2023 for sale by Classic Car Auctions. And it shows as being sold, but interestingly, if we do a check on the V5, there's been no V5 issued since 2021, which was the previous auction. So it appears that may well not have been sold through then. So I'd imagine that
Dale has still got that vehicle. Really, that's about it. The only interesting things, according to DVLA, it's currently untaxed, which is a bit of a naughty. But apart from that, I can't find anything else, so I'm assuming that one's still with Dale. As we come to number 5, I think we're going to start to get into some of the more contentious ones, and I'm sure you guys will be tapping away and give me your feedback within the comments, and I'd love to hear from you. So in 5th, we've got FKE 119L. And this is the van which currently resides at the National Motor Museum at Beaulieu. And if we look at this picture back in, I think 2006 by Anthony Smith on Flickr, it shows the car on display. And interest at this point, it was owned by a guy called Perry Agajanov. I hope I've got that right. And he's going to come back to the story a bit later. And he's the president of the Only Fools and Horses Appreciation Society. We can give this car some credibility because it was driven by David Jason, who was the actor that played Dale Trotter, for a programme in 2020 called Great British Inventions. And he commented,
"This is one of only a few originals that survived from the series."
So, if David Jason, National Treasure, says it's an original, who are we to question it? The previous owner, as I mentioned, was Perry Agajanov, and he had then subsequently sold it on, and it's now owned by the Beaulieu Motor Museum, so it's under their custodianship. So our 6th contender is LMM 59K, and I'm sure this one's going to cause a few comments as well. This one first came to light in the Coy Spring sale back in March 2009. It said it was an ex-character cars, which sounds like somebody would have, rented vehicles to TV shows, and it had been owned by them for 17 years. I haven't got a price on that one because it was just the listing that was there. But I have subsequently, 2 years later, February 11, it appeared at the H&H Classic sale. We've got a picture here on Flickr by Griff, and it sold there for just £3,262. Considering the value they've gone for later on in sort of 2007 and beyond, that was a bit of a bargain, assuming it's genuine. And then come March 11, just a month later, it was MOT'd and back on the road and being used. It was then listed again with in August 2012 with the H&H auctions at their Stoneleigh sale. Whether it sold there or not, I don't know. But it reappears in 2013 with a chap called Adam Sykes who's got it for sale for £17,500. He says it was the van that was used in the famous Batman and Robin episode where Dal and Rodney were dressed up as the superheroes. And also he says it was used in Mr. Bean. I'll come back to that in a minute because this all gets a little bit complicated. In 2014, we can see by my car check, there was a change of ownership. So that suggests that Adam has sold the van on a little bit later on. MOT'd again in 2014, 2015. Then goes quiet, and there was an ownership change on this one in 2017. And I believe this was the point where it was acquired by the Gaydon Motor Museum. And we've got a picture here by one of the guys that happens out regularly, Jonathan on Flickr. Picture of the van at the Motor Museum. And interestingly, the Mr. Bean thing reappears again. And Mr. Bean van obviously was different registration. That was GRA 26K and a different colour. But allegedly, if you look at this van closely, you can see where it's been repainted from blue back to yellow. And this apparently was done by one of the previous owners. And the filming of Mr. Bean, I hope this is not all getting too complicated for you because this has all blown my mind. Mr. Bean was filmed between 90 and 95, so it's quite possible this van could have been used within the series of Only Fools and Horses during the 80s, and then used for another series, Mr. Bean, and then put back into colours. So the interesting thing here, it says it was an action vehicle supplied van, whereas before obviously it was character cars. So they could, of course, been the same company in some format. I don't know. I'm just giving you the facts that I've got. But that one is at the Gaydon Motor Museum. Our seventh contender I'm going to treat very carefully. It's RTE 371L. And the reason I'm going to be really careful is it's owned by Ricky the Hitman Hatton, the world champion or former world champion boxer. I'm not going to get on the wrong side of him. Now, he purchased this back in 2004, saw through an acquaintance of his, and he paid just £4,000 for it. And yes, so we look at My Car Check, there's a change of ownership in 2004, which makes sense. Interestingly, it went from green to yellow in 94, which was after most of the programs had been made. So that's possibly not a positive sign on it, but it could just been someone tidying up the paperwork. 2008, the car reappears with fifth gear, and they take it on from Ricky to get it back on the road. It had been sat around for a while. They do a bit of a rebuild on it, and Johnny and Ricky go for a ride in it. So it's back on the road, and we can actually see that MOT in 2008 expired in 09, along with the tax, and it was probably off the road then. Interestingly, fifth gear suggested he paid £20,000 for the van rather than the $4,000 that had been said at the beginning of the story. 2017, he did this little skit leaving his gym for training. Looks like he's going to get into a posh car, but actually appears in the Reliant van behind it. Was MOT'd in 2017. Hadn't done a lot of miles at all. I think he'd done about 50 miles. And of course, from 2018, it was MOT exempt. Goes quiet again on this one. And it reappeared last in 2023 in the Daily Star, when Ricky said unfortunately he's going to have to stop driving it because it's a bit of a death trap, and you know, it was something that shouldn't be on the road. So that's the last we've got of that one. Appears it, you know, it's still in Ricky's hands, and if Ricky says it's original, it is, because this is what he did when he was sparring with Johnny Smith after that 2008 program. I thought he'd taken his head off. With number 8, we really are getting on the periphery here, but I thought I've included this one just because there's a little bit of interest in the background, and someone's going to bring it up anyway, so I thought I'll get in first. XRW 151L. This is quite a late entry, really. It first appeared December 2021 when East Bristol Auction sold it amongst a really large collection of Only Fools and Horses memorabilia. Apparently this van had been used in countless promo material for the show. It was also been signed by David Jason himself. Interestingly, it was once owned by Perry Agajanov. Remember him from earlier? And he also included a letter of authenticity from the Only Fools and Horses Appreciation Society, which I think he's president of, isn't he? Obviously a coincidence. I just thought I'd mention it in passing. The van itself sold for £24,000 and included a signed DVD box set as well. Apparently the van was the one featured inside the DVD box set. But that's about it on that one. It does appear I've got some pictures by Andrew 2.8i in 2022. Interestingly, not far from me, Western Supermare Pageant of Motoring. Great event if you ever get to it. It's pictured there with someone trying to sell automobilia, a lot of it related to Only Fools and Horses. And it's had the current keeper since November 21, which sort of ties in with the December 21 auction. Something slightly out there, but not anything too drastic. Wasn't MOT'd since at least 2006 because it's not on the MOT register, but 2018, anything over 40 years old didn't need an MOT, so it's free to go. Again, I'm not going to suggest this vehicle was used within the program, but it's on the periphery, so which is why I included it. Just to round this off, I've got a couple of also rans. The plates, I'm sure someone's going to bring up. I'll just tell you what I found out about them, and you can go from there. NJB 33L. That's one, according to the Reliant Motor Club, was the final vehicle supplied for use on the programme. And that was supplied around 1987. The only thing I found is around that time, do you remember the episode where Rodney jumped the bridge trying to evade some people that were chasing him? Well, apparently that vehicle suffered quite a lot of damage on landing and was not drivable again and was scrapped. This sort of fits that era. It might not be the right one. I may have taken a bit more of a leap of faith than I should have done. I've got a funny feeling that might be the one though, because that was towards the end of the series of filming, and obviously it's disappeared. So that one I haven't got any more on. And finally, Classic Car Weekly did a little article on the vans, and you know, that's been a bit of a source of information for me. But they mentioned the vehicle CDF 102J. Doesn't exist on DVLA. Absolutely nothing on that one whatsoever. So I can't help you at all on that one, but I just wanted to log it. Someone has claimed that was an original vehicle. I really hope you've enjoyed that one. Sorry I've been working off notes a bit on this one, but it's been a bit of a challenge, this, trying to get everything right. I really hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have, please consider giving that subscribe button a click. You know, 3/4 of you watching this don't subscribe. And in the meantime, have a look at this video, which we think you're going to enjoy.